So I'm actually going to use a dark glass pedal for the choruses because it's way more punky. It sounds like this. Obviously, that's just distortion like mad. We don't want that. It's pop punk at the end of the day. So I'm actually going to bring the drive down. So the bass, that's the bass sound. Then when the choruses hit, I'm actually going to bring in that dark glass pedal and give a bigger bass sound for those choruses to help the dynamics of the whole song. Let's lead into the chorus so I can hear the change a bit better. Yeah, that was cool. I really liked that lift that it gave it. So to me, that helped. In this video, we will mix the bass and get into the verse and palm muted guitars in real time for this pop punk / emo song. This is part 3 of this real-time mixing video series where we will mix a song from start to finish, all in real time without cutting out or skimming past anything. The link to get the whole series so far is in the description, and if you want to buy the multi-tracks to this song and mix along, you can get them from my Shopify in the link in the top right corner. Right, straight back into it. So let's listen to where we left off in part 2. Yeah, so the rhythm guitars are 90% mixed. We've got the bass tone in there without really any mixing, and then we've mixed the drums. So the kick and snare are mixed, overheads, rooms, and all that. So now we've got our bass tone, which we chose in part 1, but we haven't actually mixed it. So now's the time to actually bring out the best bits of it. And it already sounds pretty good if I play it in solo. Yeah, it's quite consistent. It's programmed bass, so it's naturally going to be consistent anyway. So we haven't got too much to do in terms of dynamics, in terms of like muddiness and low end build up. So on these tracks so far, we've got our bass DI, which is raw, which sounds like this. And on it, we've got a compressor, the Blue Stripes 1176, the one from Vegas we're using. But the idea is I just like the attack and release on this and the sort of aggression and stuff that you get out of it. So also in our bass sound is this bass amp, same compressor, which is copied over from the DI. And then this is the important thing, is that we chose a bass amp tone using this Ampeg plugin here. So I went with this Dark Lows preset because from this, if you have watched the first video, you'll know I was looking to add weight to that bass sound with this amp. And that sounds like this. Yeah, really dark. So that together with the amp sound and just the raw DI sounds like this. And then add in parallax. So we've got this parallax track as well. So this bass track that I'm using is literally just one track, and I've copied and pasted it. So I'm layering up the bass basically. I really think that adds so much like texture and gives you all the elements that you want from like a modern bass sound. So you can make it punky. You can make it punky and dark like we've gone for here. And then you can sort of balance these 3 faders, the DI, the amp, and the parallax tone. Sort of get the sound that you want. So the parallax is giving us all of our like punky grit. Sounds like this. Yeah, really cool. So this is the parallax from Neural DSP, but this is just like a gritty, distorted bass sound, really. We haven't gone metal with it. The distortion's actually off, but you could get the same kind of sound from a Sans amp pedal, that free BOD plugin from KSE Audio that's like crazy good. You know, just a little bit of like punky bass distortion, basically. And yeah, we've got the same compressor copied over. So the parallax by itself, then all 3 of them together. Yeah, so we've got like a dark, punky bass sound, which is actually how I describe this song. It's sort of dark and punky with emo elements and stuff. So we have got 2 other bass tracks, but these are for use with that throughout the song. So I'm actually going to use a dark glass pedal for the choruses. So the bass, that's the bass sound. Then when the choruses hit, I'm actually going to bring in that dark glass pedal and give a bigger bass sound for those choruses to help the dynamics of the whole song. That's definitely a good place to start as we are at the chorus. Chorus kicks in about here. Further along. There, that's the hit. This is why, folks, you should use markers in your project. I'm lazy and I don't do them, and I always miss them because I could just find the chorus straight away. So that hit there is where we want chorus to kick. So I'm going to cut out that transient. Then obviously this is the end of it here. So I don't want that last note to ring out. I don't want that to have the dark glass sound on it. I want to start returning back to the dynamic of the verses for that. So I'm going to copy this chorus part over to the dark glass, and now let's prep this. Okay, so I'm going to use another expensive neural DSP plugin here. I'm going to use the Dark Glass Ultra, but like I said, the BOD, anything that's gritty and distorted, really. So you could use the black one here, which is like a really metal sound. If I show you, that's not really what I'm going for with this production, but if you really wanted like a in your face heavy bass, that's a great sound for that. So I actually swap it over from the B7U model to the VDU because it's way more punky. It sounds like this. Obviously that's just distortion like mad. We don't want that. It's pop punk at the end of the day. So I'm actually going to bring the drive down and start getting kind of a bit of top end, but I'm mostly looking for mid-range really. I want the bass to sort of pop out in that area for the chorus and make that sound big. I don't want more sub really, a bit of low mids. I don't want more treble and harshness because I'm already going to get that from leads and cymbals and all that stuff in the chorus. So kind of like an upper mid-range kind of boost. Yeah, so not too much bass there. Obviously it sounds a little thin on its own, but blended in with the other stuff it's not going to. So there's this little switch here, depending on your resolution. I'm not sure if it's that clear, but depending on what point I put this little toggle switch, you've got 1.5 kilohertz, 3 kilohertz, and 750 hertz. And that's sort of like where the bump of the high mids is going. And I actually preferred the 1.5 kilohertz for what I've got in my head. This is what the 3K sounded like. I want more of the 1.5. Yeah, a little bit more honky, but obviously not that much. Other things we can think about here, which is quite cool with this plugin, is we've got a grunt, which sort of gives us like a shunt in different. So if we want to have like a low end attack, we can boost it, or we can pull it down from the low end like that. We're in the middle. Yeah, you can hear how cool the grunt switch is. It's always worth playing with it if you have this plugin. I like what it's doing there. We are going to do a high pass filter and make sure that the low end doesn't get messy with all these bass tracks in when this comes in. But I like what that grunt sounds like. Let's try the attack one on the left. Yeah, so that basically takes the top end out of it on the attack, but I quite like I like it there. This can get problematic, and if I find there's a build up in the harshness between the bass and the guitars, I'm going to bring that down. Let's have a listen to the whole bass sound now that we've got this in, and I want to see that attack switch. I want to see what actually does sound best in more context. Yeah, it's just way more exciting with the attack actually in the middle, which is like a top end boost. Try the flat one. I might go with the flat one because I know from past experience using this, I have to do quite a bit of cleanup in the sort of 3K area. I think that this flat might give us that sort of like padded thickness from the chorus that I want with the bass, but then hopefully it won't conflict with the guitars and stuff. And if I find like it's too boring, then I'll come back and I'll put that switch back on. Yeah, cool. So similar to the others, if you have watched the first video on this bass amp track here, we used in phase from waves to make sure that they were properly phase aligned. As you can see, I've actually flipped phase, which we found to be the best sound. So I'm going to do a similar thing, but I'm actually going to EQ this first. And then once that EQ is done, then I'll phase align them so the EQ doesn't mess that up. This is more of like a safety thing. So I'm going to make sure we're not getting low end that we don't need added into the mix here. Maybe remove some honk, we'll see. Yes, I know I boosted the 1.5K area, but that spike, when I listened to it, was actually a little bit drastic. You know, the spike is still there. I'm just going to contain it with a dynamic EQ to keep it controlled. We've already got our bass sound, remember. I don't want to add in any complications. Yeah, so you can see it only really take an effect at certain points, which is what I was hoping for. Okay, now time to phase align. So with the bass amp, I phase aligned it to the raw DI, and so I'll do the same with this one to keep everything consistent. So I'll bring up in phase. I'll set it to compare it to bass DI. There we go, let's capture it. Yeah, straight away it's telling me it's out of phase. So like before, we'll flip it, see what that sounds like. Yeah, isn't that such a drastic change? And layering up bass is great, but you have to watch out for these problems. We'd be sort of shooting ourselves in the foot here if we didn't do that. I'm going to see if I can slide this delay thing here. Is going to push back my dark glass by ever so like milliseconds at a time. And we'll see if we can get an even better phase alignment, but that sounds good to me. Cool, so according to the plugin, that's way more phase aligned than just flipping it. Let's actually see if that's true. So I'm going to compare the two of them now. Set this back to 0, as you can see there, and then I'll flip between the two. Interesting, way more mid-range when I have this set to 1.23 milliseconds, but I just prefer the darker sound when it was just flipped by itself and I hadn't pushed anything back. I'm going to go with the extra mid-range though, because that was what we wanted out of it. So let's just hear it in context with what we have so far. Actually, it does sound better when it's just flipped. Let's lead into the chorus so I can hear the change a bit better. I can hear it come in. Yeah, that was cool. I really liked that lift that it gave it. It's a lot louder, you know, the fader wise, it's up higher than the others, but I'm after that impact. So to me, that helped. We haven't even done any automation or anything. It's just lifting the track at that point. And a great tip, if you wanted to find a way to make your choruses bigger, that's a good way of doing it. Now I've got that, we need to repeat this at the other choruses. Cool, so this is actually where the next chorus comes in. Mute this guitar down here for now. So there's 2 stabs and then the chorus comes in properly. There, loads of sense when you look at it like that. 2 stabs, where do we end up? Yep, that's the end of the chorus there. So we'll copy that over. And this is a bridge part. I don't want that to be as big as the chorus. No, so we won't bring it in there. We'll bring it in for the end of the song. So this bass grind, I'm reserving that for the end of the song where it's like a beat down, throwback. And if you heard, like one of those like punky metalcore-ish beat downs at the end of the song. So we'll play with that towards the end because it might be a case of just having the grind and not the dark glass, or it'll be a case of having all 5 at that point. But that could be, too much. We'll see. But it's cool to have this like creative element to the song. It's how you keep the song interesting and give it a journey. That sounds a bit corny, but you want to give it a journey. You want the big bits to be big. You want to bring the smaller bits down for that contrast and that get a bit of dynamics in there. And this is a great way of doing that. Okay, so let's actually get into mixing the bass. So previously we did add a C4 just to control, it's like a dynamic compressor, so it just controls the low end from building up, mostly for when this kicks in, because I want to make sure that it doesn't muddy up our bass or push the sub too much. Yeah, you saw it move then, right? It kicked it, having that extra bit in. So that actually keeps our low end consistent, even when we're adding bass layers in like that. So I like how it's moving. Compression wise, because it's such an even, it's program bass, it's even. I'm not worried too much about getting my dynamics under control. I think most importantly now we need to get some EQ in there, boost out some of that sort of like clankiness that's really cool, that bass presence, maybe a bit of bite, maybe a bit of low end, we'll see. And then after that, we'll make some decisions about whether we need to do some more compression and whatnot. So I am going to do something I like to do a lot, which is add in some analog sort of saturation you'd get from like outboard gear and stuff like that, because this is obviously completely in the box. So I do like to add in a bit of those like flavors, and I'm going to start with a little bit of Saturn 2 and we'll go for the tube. I like that on bass and guitars. We'll go for warm tube and we'll see what that's going to give us. Very subtle it'll be though. Yeah, this all adds up to sounding a bit less in the box, but the idea is not to dial it in on any one thing in particular. I'll make this a bit more exaggerated so you can hear the difference that it's making, but it's obviously not going to be a distorted sound from this plugin at least. Yeah, so if you want something subtle, Saturn 2 is good. And I'll always give it a quick comparison with this really cool Waves one, the non-linear summer. But this is an obvious saturation, or it will change the tone and vibe quite drastically. So if you want something a bit more drastic, this is a good one. You saw me play around with this in the previous videos anyway on this series. So we know that the mic gives us a bit more of a low-end, darker feel. The Neve opens things up a little bit, gets them punchy. Spike is like your SSL compression, I think, which has its own sound too. So let's compare. That's actually making things a little muddy to my ear, so I'm going to flick between the mic and the spike. Quite like that. Let's see what it's like off and on. So let's compare it without any saturation, see if we do like what it's doing. Yeah, I like that. It's got a bit of an analog sound to it. Let's compare that to the Saturn. Very similar, actually, in terms of what they're doing to the EQ. This one's a bit more drastic. I'm going to go with the Saturn because I know I've got it happening on a lot of other tracks, so I want to keep it building up gradually. Cool, so now let's get into that EQ. So I'm going to use my trusty Waves SSL channel, as I like to do a lot, because I think I just know this plugin, maybe that's why I always favour it, but I really like it. So the first thing I'm going to do is try and find that clankiness. I'm not going to do it in solo, I'm going to do it with the whole track. Try and find where that clanky top end presence is coming, and hopefully it won't sound harsh and it won't sound like pokey. It'll be like a nice bit of, here's the bass, here's the clankiness of the bass. Cool. So it sounds to me like we've got two choices to make. We've got that more mid-rangey one, which is this boost is too high for. And then we've got the one just over 3K where it was like a bit higher, but a bit smoother. I think I favour that one, but let's just compare it with a lower decibel boost for the honkier one. See what that sounds like. Oh, this is tough because they actually both sound cool. This is why I like this program bass in particular. It's punk bass from Submission Audio. I like that you can find these spots in it. Yeah, sometimes you haven't got this choice because it sounds a little thin and a bit ratty and pokey, spiky, that kind of thing. A bit harsh. But this is a tough choice to make. I'm going to see if I can do both, actually. I've got more than one EQ band. Why would I have to choose? Let's see what both sound like. Yeah, we're kind of bringing the bass out and almost sitting it on top of the guitars a little bit. These are all choices that you're making. And are we making the bass too prominent here? That's the question that's in my head because I like how that sounds, but I've got to think of the bigger picture and the whole song. Do I want the bass to be that prominent? I kind of do, I think. We've also got lead guitar happening. So, our hierarchy is going to be rhythm guitar, bass maybe sitting slightly above it with these EQ boosts, and then we've got the lead guitar that will be more prominent than that. So guitars aren't getting a raw deal necessarily, unless you're just a rhythm guitarist in the band, and then you might be a little bit butthurt. But the bassist will be happy. Right, let's try it. Yeah, I do like it. Let's play it leading into the chorus so I can hear how it sounds without the dark glass. I'm a fan of that. Maybe I'll eat my words later in these future videos. Maybe I'll be bringing this back in. It might cause a problem. But for now, if it sounds good, go with it, right? Maybe I'm overthinking it probably. I'm going to see how that sits. See if we end up going down in the right direction here. Okay, so now is a very difficult judgment call. We're talking about the low end now. So how much of that do I really want? There's already quite enough there, really. The song doesn't sound particularly thin to me. So we're going to play around with this and we're going to see. It might make things too bass heavy. This is obviously another decision that you want to make. Modern stuff has more low end in it, and there's a trick I'm going to do at the end of this bass mixing so that we still get the kick, even if we push low end into the bass and they haven't necessarily got to fight each other, which is more of a modern thing. I don't want to, although it is a throwback kind of sound, I don't want to make things harder just because they were harder back in those days. But things have got easier now. We've got clever ways of doing things. Why would I castrate myself in that way? Cool. So let's get a feel for that. I'm gonna get a filter going. I want the kick below the bass really, so I'm gonna filter on it. These are the most gentle filters. Go 55. That's probably good for our key. And then we're gonna do a low shelf. I'm gonna start at 100. We'll play around with that and see how that feels. Okay, let's get this bass in. So that's where I really feel it there at 9 decibels. I really feel that low end change the whole balance of the song. Not necessarily in a bad way, but too much low end, even if it does sound good sometimes, can still have implications with your dynamics. Where when you get to mastering, it can be a problem. And it can change the whole feel of the song. So I'm going to bring it back a little bit, but I think we can get away with a bit of a boost. We have got that bass amp track obviously giving us a lot of weight, so we don't need too much. Yeah, I can even hear it's prominent at 5 decibels. So let's do 3 and I'll compare it now. So I'll put it back to 0 and I'll compare. Yeah, even that seemed like quite drastic. I'm going to bring it down to 1.8, 1.5. I think that would be a nice spot. Yeah, it's sort of pushing into my ears a little bit at that point. 1.5 is probably going to be nice. I like what we've got. So let's compare this bass tone off and on, and we'll do it in solo as well. Yeah, pushing those boosts through the guitars basically in solo. Yeah, accentuating the cool bits of the tone. Just quickly, if you make music like this and you want me to mix your next song or release, head over to my website, terrybeckleyrecording.com. Scroll down to the contact form, send me a message there, and I will get back to you. The link is in the description. Bringing them out over the sort of more dull, flatter bits, and the bass got a bit of life, hasn't it, when that EQ's in there? It's got a bit more character, a bit more like grit and aggression. It's cool. Still not entirely sure on this bass boost. Bring it down to a decibel and see if I actually care now that it's really subtle boost. Yeah, I think it's probably better than nothing. Yeah, it adds a tiny little bit of weight without it pushing into my ears. Again, all this stuff is revisitable, so you can come back and change it. We're slowly sort of painting this picture, so there's no reason why we can't go back under the top layers when we get further on and actually make adjustments later on in the game. Okay, so now I'll bring up a visual EQ, a bit more of a surgical one. We're just going to fine-tune anything that needs fine-tuning, but we're not going to be changing the sound with this. This is just, we've done a load of boosting, right? So now if we need to cut, it'll be on this EQ. Cool, so nothing too drastic, a couple of harsh spots. You know, I know we're going to have vocals and we're going to have lead guitar, so I'm conscious of those. That's why I cut these two out. They're dynamic as well because I don't want to do cuts. I just want them to be I want them to only really be getting reduced when it's a problem. And there's a bit of this like garbage part of the tone here, nothing that I really needed. So that's more of a safety thing to make sure that doesn't make things sound a bit too flat sounding. Already got our low end filter in the last one. Top end filter might be worth just doing it just for safety of it. Let's have a listen. We'll do it on the SSL. Yeah, it doesn't make a difference really to the sound, but I feel much more comfortable with it on. Cool, so that's actually sounding pretty decent. I've got these verse guitars that are currently muted. This is actually the palm muting stuff. Where I went for a lower gain tone here, palm muting doesn't always translate well to that. It can sound a little bit farty. So if I take this over, so we'll do the same tone, but we'll just adjust it. You know, this is a similar thing to adding a bit more gain on a pedal when you're playing live, or automating different controls up for a bit more gain in the chorus. You know, it's that kind of thing. So I'll hear what it sounds like and probably just give it a bit more gain and make it sound a bit more appropriate for the palm muting parts. Let's have a listen to the song. That's cool. I like that. It's got like a Blink 182 kind of palm muted distortion to it, right? And they're really good pick attack in there, which is helping that amp react. That's, I often think when people struggle to get that Blink 182 tone, it's because the actual chugging part, the palm muting parts, the transient's not strong enough to make the amp react. You can see how big that peak is there. Look, it's how you play it a lot of the time, and just don't over distort it. Obviously, I'm not saying I went for that sound. I just happened to hear a similarity to it. I'm not saying that this is the way you get a Blink 182 tone. Don't have a go at me about that. That's just something, oh, that sounds a bit similar to that. So do I want to give it a bit more gain? Let's have a listen. So what I do want to do is have that tube screamer engaged, because their low mids are taking care of themselves with that. And the scratchiness of that is kind of being shaved off at the peaks. It sounds a little nicer, less spiky. Yeah, helps us to get that darker sound that we were talking about, still keeping the big picture of the song in mind. Let's try a little bit more gain. Not a fan of that, actually. I think the more gain is pushing it into a realm where really I might as well just switch it to be the 5150 and have like a chuggy, a bit heavier sound. It's not really where I want to go with this song, but just for comparison's sake, I'm going to copy this tone so I don't lose it. But just for comparison's sake, I'm going to switch it to the 5150 and just hear what a heavier sound is going to be like. Yeah, we've got a whole load of more problems to deal with if we do choose this. We've got every chug is giving us a low end woof, like a little grunt of like low end. I'm not really a fan of it. I think it sounded much better before. Keep it as this. And if you listen now, so the palm muting happens here. See this little bit? This is on our normal rhythm guitar track. So we can hear the comparison between the two tones now, and it's literally just a pedal off and on. I could have automated it, turns out, but I'm lazy. So let's hear them switch between the two, from the palm muting to this little bit here. See if they sound like the same guitar. We don't want it to sound too different. Yeah, bit of a volume boost jump, but that's probably because this is down -4 and I've left this one at 0. So bring that into the same volume. I like it. I do want a bit more gain out of it, maybe. Maybe B, I'll just try this pedal, bit of treble boost on it. Maybe, actually. Maybe. Hear that in context. Oh, it's a tough one. No, I'll prefer it off. I think we'll just give it a slight volume boost over the other one, maybe a decibel. What we can do actually with these archetype, or with these Neural DSP amps, and I've had people argue with me about it because apparently it's not in the manual, but I'm telling you, I've seen top producers, like the guy who mixed the latest Neck Deep album, for example, does this to get more gain out of the Neural DSP amps. So it's just pushing the input knob basically to get more or less gain out, as if you would put more signal into an amp, to get more gain out of it. Yeah, a bit more life. Let's hear that. Quite like it. Tiny a bit more energy to it, so we'll go with that. We haven't used Soothe on the guitars, which I do normally do. I didn't think it needed it, but I'm just wondering what it sounds like. There's a plugin which is pretty good here, a preset, sorry, that's pretty good, which is called, De-Digitized Software Amp. It always gives you a boost of volume, so I'll bring that down before I listen. Hear that. It does darken it, which could be cool. Slow the attack down a little bit. Yeah, I think that might just give us... There's like a little tiny little bit that's pinching my ear, the tiniest amount. I just want to get rid of that. Yeah, it does it nicely, actually. Keep that there. Sounding cool. Cool. So there's some other parts of the song that have guitar on this bit. Let's hear them. I think they're harmonics, if I remember. Yeah, they need way more distortion. So I'm going to put this onto a different track now. That needs a lot more gain. Yeah, I like that. Definitely could do with some delay. It's nice, right? I like it. Reverb. Do I want a bit of reverb? Maybe. Slightest bit. Not sure. Yep, I think that's sounding pretty decent. I could do some delay going into the amp too, which can be... Maybe. Gives it a bit of like a warble effect. Yep, I think I'm into that. I think that sounds cool. The this that you're hearing, that weird noise, that's actually the pick scrape that I haven't put anything on yet. so let's get the pick scrape going. That's obviously going to need probably a similar tone. So yeah, I've copied that over to this pick scrape track. Yeah, a bit dead in it. Definitely want this delay off. Don't want that warble effect on it now. Is that too slow? Do a quicker one, like a 16 bit, building up to like a wall of sound. Yeah, there you go. We'll do it on 16. Less feedback. Yeah, cool. That's it. So distortion wise, probably want more than that. Let's give it some gain on this amp first, and then if not, I'm going to swap over to the 5150. Yeah, it's a bit lifeless, isn't it? Give it some actual distortion. I hate the delay. We'll work that out later. Yeah, there you go. That's a bit more like it. It needs to be a little bit louder. Fader up a little bit on it. Less low end on it. Probably going a bit more bite. That 8K, more 8K is actually helpful. Yeah, that's helpful. Thing I might do, get my trusty Mag EQ out and give it get a 2K like I would on a lead guitar, and give a bit of air band. Might be too much. Yeah, cool. Bring it back down in volume a little bit. I mean, we need more context of the song really for this pick slide, but just want to get like a general idea. Bit more gain. EQ changing there, so I'll put the low down a little bit, push the mids. Yeah, we'll go with that. That one will need a bit of automation. That's probably a little bit too much for that part of the song, but we'll get to that when we get into our automation and stuff. Okay, so lead guitars, I'm going to wait until after the vocals are in, because I don't want them to be fighting for the same space. And I know that if I start bringing the lead guitars in now, I'm going to plonk them right where I want the vocals to be, really. So we'll get to that. The only other bit here is this pre-chorus guitar lead, which actually I believe is mic'd up, isn't actually an amp sim. Yeah, that's because it's supposed to sound a little bit different and a little bit, I want like less fullness to it. So I sort of dialed this in differently. Very bright. So I just want this to be a little bit, because this is a transition into the second chorus. So the chorus starts, the second chorus starts with just vocals and a bit of this guitar, and then everything kicks in. So I'm just trying to make it a bit interesting and give a bit of contrast leading in. Yeah, we'll play with that when we've got a bit more context, but it's starting to come together pretty well. There are other guitar tracks, but this is literally just a lo-fi ring up for the end of the song. That we won't be able to tackle until we've got the vocals in there, so we'll come to that. And we've got the intro part here. It's kind of like a stripped back, lo-fi, distorted, but kind of clean, like chordy intro, basically. And the lead comes in as well. So with this, I kind of want. First of all, it's too loud, so we'll bring that down. Yeah, cool. So I want like a bit of a raspy but cleanish tone, and this could come from anything. So these are kind of things that take time and a bit time consuming, and they're like 2% of the song. But let's go with, to start, I'm gonna go with Corey Wong, because that is a clean sort of poppy kind of amp sim, but it has dirt to it in certain presets and stuff. So let's just try and get the vibe out of it that I'm looking for. Well, not that. Definitely not that. Let's pick something that's kind of like edge of breakup sort of thing. Too mid. This might be too boxy for us. We might go for a different amp. Try a couple others. Humbucker split squish. What does that mean? Okay, that's kind of the feel I want, but just a little bit more grit. So let's get this tube pedal going. Try the big rig overdrive. Swap the mic out here. I've got this ribbon mic, but I want a bit more of like a 57 sound. This all could be in vain. I might still switch this amp. Yeah, it's a weird sound that it's given. Not really what I'm after. Maybe the compressor's doing it. Yeah, not quite what I want. I'm sort of going back to like 2003, 2004 emo here. Maybe we just want a distorted tone. We're going to bring the gain right back. Let's go for the Gojira. Always has. This is such a versatile amp. This is literally crazy. So what you get out of this? Got here. Did crunch. We're getting somewhere here. So with these sort of like lower gain tones, the trick is to, obviously it's only really breaking up because it's an edge of breakup tone effectively. So it's only really breaking up when the harder strums are happening. So the idea is you use a compressor or use a limiter to sort of keep that breakup happening. So I'll get to a good point, but there is another amp that I'm going to quickly do a shootout of. Yeah, it's just too gainy. I've got something else up my sleeve, this Fine Classics plugin, Vintage Vibe. Let's try that. There's a preset called Midwest Emo Breakup, which is kind of the vibe I'm going for. Oh, that is really close. That is a good shout. There is another plugin from Fine Classics plugins, the pedal board, which has some really cool effects stuff. So when you're sort of getting into the more effecty, like jammy kind of stuff, this can really help. Let's have a listen. That's getting quite close as well there. That's nice. There is this plugin is incredible because it has so many different, like within this one amp pedal, there are so many different things you can do. Like these are all the preset stuff. We've got like this is obviously the cab emulation that's happening, the Mesa 4x12, but you can, there's so much to this plugin and it's worth every penny. That is very close to what I had in my head. This might win. Try a few others. The greenback, not too bad. The number 3 there's a bit of hiss I'll have to take care of, but yeah, definitely. We try mid-range focus maybe. Oh, this is tough. These are really good. And how quickly have I got there compared to fighting with the neural stuff? It's just not quite meant for this, really. Right. Maybe the AC30. Let's try pop punk. That's good. That's it. That's exactly what I had in my head. That is exactly what I'm after. Cool, so I want a bit of atmosphere now. So this plugin even has great stuff like that. Let's get Verb Vault going, see what that's going to give us. But this is why I love this plugin. I've been trying to get a video out to show it, but it's just so much to it. It's been tricky to find the topic I want to talk about with it because it can literally do so much. It's definitely worth having a look into Fine Classics because they make some great stuff. Oh man, there's so many. Let's just toggle through some and see what happens. Cool. Just want to give it a bit of atmosphere. Ambient, maybe. Too effecty for going for here. But long tail, probably not. Yeah, too washy for this. But you can see the power of this this plugin, right? Bring too bright and happy for us. Well, not quite the vibe I'm going for. Yep, I think that's going to make the shortlist. Let's do a few more of these halls. Yeah, it's obviously making things darker. I'm not sure if I want to EQ after the reverb or before it. Other reverb, try this. That's actually giving me just a bit of space that I want. So I think we'll stick with that. Yeah, so I'll get rid of that Verb Vault. Maybe some brightness. This is dependent on the context of the whole song because I want when it comes in, obviously I want that to be a big moment. Cool little subtle effect there. Give it some of that. All right, we'll see with this EQ, but I'm not sure I need it. Yeah, I really like that. I wasn't actually planning on using this pedal board in this video. However, I do have a discount code that you can use for the Fine Classic stuff. So if you do like this kind of sound and this really versatile little pedal board plugin here, then you can use this code on their website. I'll also put that link in the description as well. Like I say, unplanned plug here, but you know, I only do this with stuff that I genuinely use in real life. So thought it's fair game to mention. Intro's playing, we've got a bit of lead guitar that comes in for the second half of it. Similar sort of sound I want for this, so let's do the same tone, and we might just make it a little cleaner, because that's happening in the right speaker, and then those chords are happening in the left. Yeah, a bit too thin now, so we'll turn these off for the time being. Yeah, it really is the vibe I'm going for. Cab Sims again. Mid-range it's got a cool vibe to it, but I think smooth is probably where it's supposed to be one sound effectively. The lead and rhythm is supposed to sort of blend together. Cool, I don't need these things on this one. Do I want a bit of a compressor, maybe, just before the distortion, just to bring out the picking and stuff? Yeah, it's really helping with that edge of breakup sound too. The picks are sort of getting a bit of different response out of the amp. That's really cool. Straight out all from this Fine Classics pedal board plugin. Like, blows my mind. Really useful thing to have. Cool. So this is actually going to be, the idea of having this here is that actually I want to be in the middle as a central lead part. Pretty much going to be the same. So for now, we'll just copy those settings over. But that might change because as there's going to be vocals on that point and there's a bit of synth happening. So as the song comes together, we can make more accurate decisions. But we want to be able to get these in and move on for the time being. Yeah, so whereas there it sounds a little bit pushed back too much. Quickly just get a rough idea. Yeah, cool. That might change, but for now it gives us what we need to move on. If you want to see more videos like this where I'm mixing pop punk and emo and similar genres, then head over to my channel. There's a ton of videos there. And if you want to see how I'd go about mixing a strictly pop punk bass tone, then you can watch this video here. Keep your eyes peeled for part 4 of this mixing series, where we'll get into some vocals and a bit of synth. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you at the next one.